Well, good morning, everyone. And this morning we're talking about women in business with a particular emphasis on mental health. I'm not really sure what your experience is when it comes to working either with people with complex mental health needs or learning disabilities. You might have a disability yourself. You might be juggling a disability within a relationship. You might be dealing with, perhaps you might find out you've got ADHD, or you might be on the spectrum of autism. I'm on the spectrum of autism and I love it. I've got amazing superpowers because I'm on the spectrum, and I love meeting other people that are on the spectrum too. I can remember meeting a friend's son and he said to me, I'm autistic. And I said, so am I. He said, can we sit down and just talk autism? And I thought, oh, that's so great, so healthy. Can we just sit down and talk autism? I thought it was wonderful. So I'm sure we're going to be spanning a whole raft of topics, and we've got an amazing presenter who's going to be almost giving us her expertise this morning. And so I shall be introducing her to you later. But we're going to be introducing to you the ladies who jumped online this morning who want to explore this topic too. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Sangeeta to you. So Sangeeta, over to you.
Thank you so much. No, when you shared the Zoom link for this topic, and I thought that was so important. Like, I have experienced my own emotions and my own mental health kind of thing was not understood at work, being a broadcaster. I'm an empath as well. So if I'm having an interview, people are coming in and I'm listening to their story, I feel that emotion. So sometimes I cry, and I remember, my manager and other presenters, they look at me, it's like, you're supposed to be neutral, or whatever is going on in the house, you should leave and park it there and come. And I was like, no, but this is who I am. And that's why people listen to my radio, because they feel I'm being authentic. If I'm talking about, like, my dad passed away and I spoke about it, and I had to pause because I was crying, I was in tears, but I wanted to show that emotion. But I know that people are not sometimes ready, or they expect you to be a certain way because you are professional higher up. So I think I'm so glad that we are talking about mental health, because it's so well needed. And I think we have, and that's my own perspective, it might not be the fact, that because we are teaching people to suppress their emotions and not to being themselves, and I think it's kicking in a lot more. We are seeing a lot more cases of mental health. um, you know People are struggling with that, mental health, or be it emotional health. And at work, people need to be more open, more empathetic, and just put the work side. And if somebody is having a meltdown or somebody is struggling something, just to connect to them on a human level. It's so important. So I'm glad we are talking about it. Hey, that's the shorter version.
Thank you, Sangeeta. That was the shortest version of her introduction. There we go. Thank you, Sangeeta. Karen, over to you. What's your experience of working with people perhaps on the spectrum or in any kind of mental health environment?
Um, I think I work with all sorts of people just because of what I do. I don't think of people on the spectrum. I just think of everybody's not normal. There is no such thing as normal. Therefore, in some shape or form, we're all abnormal. We just have to work out what that is. And I just take people as they are. I don't have preconceptions. I try and, listen to what people say about other people, but ignore it and then make my own judgments. So I will help anybody who needs help. There are people I know on the spectrum who are more challenging than anything else, but mainly it's finding what works for them. But there's abilities and disabilities right across the board. It's not just about neurodiversity. There's a friend of mine who I didn't even realize was deaf. But it made me think about how accessible my online training is. So everything now has subtitles that people can access. Just very, very simple things that you can do to make it easier for other people. And it's just about being human and just being kind.
Yeah.
Oh.
And sometimes people might present as being awkward, and I've always felt humor plays a massive role in that. I can remember working from a very large government agency, and they almost, they said, oh, this person is the most difficult person we've ever had to work with, and he's complained about everyone else, and can you see him now? And I'm thinking, oh goodness me, so it's almost like as though they'd said, you've got the last straw, now over to you. And I think that's where NLP sort of helped, when you can mirror somebody, because he came into the room and he was super difficult. And I said, oh, I really love your behavior. And he said, what do you mean? He said, I've reported everyone who's worked with me. I said, but you've never worked with me. I said, I'm twice as difficult as you. And his wife was there, and she went into hysterics of laughter, and she said, you've met your match. And we're still friends to this day, sort of 20 years later, we're still really good friends, So humor plays a lot in it, and not looking for that head on, listening and just having fun with whatever's turning up that day between you. So I'm going to come to you, Lynn. Thank you, Karen. So what's your experience in this sector or with the topic?
Lots. Hi, Nick. Nick and I have met in our other lives. Yeah, so I think I've experienced a lot of what everybody's been saying, sort of personally and at work. It's been quite difficult for me, but the work that I'm doing now, I actually use those examples and share that with other people to help them like get through what they're going through. So even though that was tough for me, it's really important to, the authenticity that Sangeeta was talking about is so important for people to be able to connect, because it's all about connection for me. And being kind, Karen, I totally agree. Sometimes we just need to be kind, and that's all people are asking for, no matter what's going on for them. So I think it's a really important topic in all areas of our lives. And I've learned lots from Nicola already, and hoping to learn some more today.
Hey, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ellen. So perhaps, I know you're looking at putting learning online. So I suppose you're going to learn lots this morning about making your learning accessible online as well. So over to you, Ellen. What's your experience of this topic?
A very important topic indeed. I myself dyslexic. I have 3 dyslexic children. I suspect I am ADHD. I've got all the signs. I haven't gone for a test. So yeah, I'm all over this, to be honest. Have seen in my reflexology practice, my life coaching, come across people with anxiety, depression, and suffer with different life challenges. So yeah, anything you can provide as learning, because I love to absorb as much as I can, and I love to work on myself as well as much as I can, because I don't think we can give to others unless we've done the work on ourselves first. So all over it. Can't wait to hear you talk.
I totally agree with Ellen. We have to work on ourselves, and what Karen said, being kind, what I recognized is that if I'm not kind to myself, I don't know how I'm going to be kind to others. Although we pretend, we need to understand others. So it's all about self-journey. I need to know, if I'm judgmental about myself, I will be judgmental about others. So recognizing that, it's a powerful thing.
Thank you, Sangeeta. And coming to you, Jane. So what's your experience in this sector or this topic? Is Jane there? Julie, sorry, Julie. I'm reading Julie and saying Jane. Julie Baker, are you there? I know she's off camera. Right, I'm going to introduce to you the amazing Nicola, and she's given me a sort of lowdown of what she does. She's absolutely an incredible lady, and everything's jumped around on my phone. So everything's gone on my phone now. She's a solution-based therapist. And Lynn, as you've already worked with Nicola, can you do the little introduction for us and tell us what your experiences of working with her? Why did you meet? How did you meet? And what did you come away with?
That's on the spot. She's amazing. We met because I was supporting children. I was supporting parents whose children were going through similar things. And Nicola also supports parents who were going through the same thing. So we met that way, and she came and did a talk in a group that I was running way back in lockdown, was it? It was when COVID was going on. So, and it was really helpful. It was really helpful. She lives very, we've talked about being authentic and being kind, and she lives all that stuff. And I really admire that, because I know life can be tough. But like me, she uses her life experiences to share with others and help others see a different way, maybe, or just not feel on their own in the world. So yeah, she's fab.
Oh, what a fantastic introduction. Come on stage, Nicola. Can we give Nicola a round of applause, even though we're online? Over to you, Nicola.
Thank you, Cheryl, for inviting me in, and thank you, Lynn. That's hard when you're put on the spot and you aren't ready. I'm just going to say that I've got some fiddle toys, and I'll go through and explain why afterwards. But I want to say thank you to Cheryl for inviting me to come and speak. And yeah, I'm Nicola Reekie. I'm the founder of something called the PDA Space, which I'll go into, which sort of it's just grown organically. It was never on my life plan. I'm as Cheryl said, holistic, solution-focused therapist. My background is I'm a reflexologist, Reiki practitioner, neuro-linguistic coach, to name a few. And the reason the PDA space came about was really, in a way, coincidence. I was going to host the first conference, and I'll go in and explain in a minute about what PDA is, April 2020. And we all know what happened. We don't need to go over that. And I had some amazing speakers that were traveling all over the UK to come to Cardiff to talk. And by chance, walking my dog, I met somebody who I'd met in a business situation, and knew that they were very techie. I am the least techie person, even though I have an online business, which I find my boys find hysterical. And I'm all about finding that solution. And we were able to then create an online summit. That first one in 2020, we had 22 webinars. We literally, it was the beginning of everything sort of changing online. It was in a pop-up Facebook group, as you do, that we came across so many challenges. But what I really noticed is having my NLP skills, where that first summit, and even actually every summit, where some of the speakers I've chosen from their own lived experience, they may be finding it really difficult or scared of being seen, really giving them that support, that understanding, hearing them, holding space for them. And once I think we had in that first summit several thousand people. The Facebook group has grown. So for me, my business has come from looking and needing support, looking for solutions around supporting my boys. And the reason I was hosting the first conference was was very little information globally, but more specifically in South Wales. And I'm really, really grateful. I look back over 8 years ago, we were living in a battle zone every day. One of my boys had extremely significant volatile, challenging behaviour, really lashing out all sorts. I don't really like talking about it publicly because I feel very mindful it's not just my story. And, the other person hasn't necessarily given their permission. But as a parent, it was really tough. I had professionals telling me, you just need to be strict, tough, firmer, remove whatever, if it's electronics, whatever. well, guess what? I tried that and it got worse. But actually, we've talked about connection. We've talked about the importance of meeting someone where they are. I've never yet noticed that if you remove something from me, I will behave better. I've never yet learned that actually punishing me has ever got me to work better. And the biggest thing I suppose I've not said or spoken about, because Cheryl said about disabilities and mental health and learning difficulties, is PDA is a profile of autism that comes under neurodivergence. And the irony that last week was celebrating Neurodiversity Week, so it was just really apt that this week, my journey through supporting my boys has really supported to unpick my own differences. I was a late diagnosed dyslexic dyspraxic, but over the last few years, I've got an even better understanding of myself. I'm picking up on something that Cheryl said about, you know, somebody being called the most difficult or awkward person. I'm sure different employments may have used various of those words around me. You know, she's hard work. I've had all sorts of names and labels, which I find really interesting when there's this big thing out in the world of why do you want to label yourself? Well, I've had more than enough labels over the years, you know, from being thick, stupid, slow, too much, too loud, difficult, hard work, whatever. So my situation 8 years ago was really at loggerheads, but due to a lot of, and we've talked about that, personal development, I've done a lot of personal development since my 20s, and I think trying to understand myself better. And I really, you know, kept thinking of, I needed to stop reacting, but I didn't have those tools. Due to one of those moments that you just go, I went to a TED talk and was really inspired by the speaker, amazing lady, to change what I was doing. And it inspired me to go and look up. I'd known about NLP for years. I'd sort of played a dance with it for years, went and got booked on and did the first NLP course. Literally a few months previous, the synchronicity I find really interesting, the way the path and journeys had gone. I'd gone back to London due to some family get-togethers, my husband's family, and I had a chance conversation with a girlfriend who uttered the letters PDA to me. And I was so overwhelmed, so in my fight, flight, freeze and fawn, which again is something that's been spoken about more now, the limbic system, that I had to put those 3 letters in a text to myself and texted myself. It was over Christmas, and I know exactly which day. I looked them up because I felt that my son was manipulating me again, but I could see that there was something else going on. So I looked it up. And actually, before I say this, we'd reached out to lots of health medical professionals and were consistently told, no, your son's not autistic. So it was like, well, if he's not, then, and I've got girlfriends back home in London who said I'd mentioned this since he was 2. So I was like, well, where do I go? I didn't know the services. You know, I've only lived here 10 years. So at that point, we'd lived here 3-4 years. And I looked PDA up, and there's a lot talked about the light bulb moment around pathological demand avoidance. And either goosebumps and everything I read, and there was quite minimal then, 8 years ago online. And people, when they say now that there's not much out there, I'm like, wow, you guys have no idea, you know. And I felt really privileged because of our situation, being self-employed. I was able to go and do a training in London. And it really sort of started my journey. And I started to realize that, you know, through the NLP and this, that I needed to change. I needed to change my parenting. I needed to change the dance. So, you know, if you've ever been with somebody who has got challenging behavior, or if you, you know, in any situation, my experience is I can only change myself. I can only do that work. I can't, however much, and there's been some relationships in my life that I'd love to have changed the other person, but I can't. I've only got the power of changing myself. And it's been such a journey, and I'm really blessed by doing NLP. I mean, Cheryl's already mentioned a few bits around, and again, the neuro, you know, how our brain works, how we take the world in. And it really, I also find the links between the neuro-linguistic coaching and the neurodivergent support that I do, word neuro, but also our senses and the impact our senses can play on our nervous system and how we are able to cope in the world or not. You know, the girl who sits in our little cabin, nice and quietly, and I have everything how I want it, you know, and not in a big office because I could never cope. So I learned that I needed to change me. I needed to change how I was managing the situation at home and not try and change my boys. And I say boys because because of the anonymity, I don't, you know, and both boys have now got, we've all got lots of diagnoses. We live in a really neurodivergent home. And that situation of then questioning my values, beliefs, you know, and realizing that I'd taken on a lot of the values and beliefs that were passed down to me through family, the ones that I really didn't like, that hadn't supported me, because my mum was brought up by Victorian grandparents, a very, very strict household, and had some very different parenting styles to mine, which I'd already let go of, but I really did some deep diving, you know, and we're all different. And some of you here may be like, what? You do that? You know, we've let go of, we all sit at a dinner table. You know, what's more important is that my children eat their food. We've let go of, there's one meal that we all cook. You know, we've let go of, you know, how we do holidays, day trips, etc. Why? Because we're endeavoring to meet the need of those individuals. Because guess what? Right now, if we all sat in a cafe, we'd all probably be choosing a different meal, and that's okay. So why is it not okay in a home? We may, and I'm sitting here, as I say, I've got several fiddle toys because my anxiety of being somewhere, and also just that need to keep moving and to have something else focused on. Why is it deemed rude when we're out to perhaps be fiddling? So I went to an event on Thursday. I had my phone, I was listening, I took in loads of information, but I forgot to take any fiddle toys. When I go out normally, but I couldn't because it was a bit of a lovely, but I've got a sensory back, which I talk a lot about with the families I support, in a lot of the workshops and webinars I do, because I went to really big awards last year. I was so out of my comfort zone. You know, I had no control over what was happening that night. I had no idea, obviously, if I would win or not. I did really be grateful for. I was going on trains. I could never understand why I didn't like public transport. That trip unpacked it all, you know, had no control. There's different smells, the different people. I've really realized how heightened my anxiety is, which for years I tried to you know, deal with in not perhaps the healthiest of ways. And that trip, I really started to see how my anxiety of like, well, is the train going to get where it says, you know, the smells. So for me, neurodivergence is a really big topic, and the impact around mental health And also what I'm seeing a lot of, I think the benefit of things going online and information being shared and really sort of filtering out a massive ripple effect is people starting to look and understand their own neurodivergence. You know, perhaps who've been told that they were too loud or too fast or always late, whatever it might be. You know, the always late is actually my time. I can lose time. And the impact of, I see in my community, so the autistic community, neurodivergent community, is those that haven't been diagnosed. So I didn't know for years of some of the differences and why I'd get signed off sick for depression. There's like, I look back and that boom and bust, that autistic burnout, because I didn't understand myself. I didn't know the sensory impact. That internal dialogue that was spoken about, that I'd give myself such a hard time because for years I'd been told, you know, it was you, as in me, there was something wrong with me, you know, as I couldn't quite function within society. And that was also certain family members. I couldn't understand why in one of my jobs or several jobs, I would have like a bag in the car that I always had 2 sets of clothes. I really cannot, my sensory stuff is so big, I could never cope with being in wet clothes. I couldn't cope being too hot, too cold. I went to an event with some girls on Saturday, and it was like such a revolution of like, oh my God, years ago, I'd be like, right, exit. What happens if this happens? What? And I was able, and the sensory of being in a nightclub, I noticed that I couldn't figure out my feet, and like I'd do big stomping, and I just started to laugh. And you know, Cheryl mentioned about comedy, whereas before I'd be like, oh, and I think for me, and as I say, I see it in the community that those that haven't perhaps got the diagnosis or the right support, and we're living with that at the moment with our young people, I think education is the impact of mental health, and you know, seeing that ripple effect of the lack of understanding, the lack of support, and you know, what I'm noticing is we're getting a lot more sort of, well, depending on the age group, there is a lot of blocks on getting diagnoses, but there seems to be there's a lot more independent people, there's a lot more out there. Unfortunately, Wales has chosen not to do right to choose and other easier options, but there is different options like screenings or ways. However, the mental health of perhaps with autistic burnout or not getting our needs met, because I think our sensory needs are so important, because that's our nervous system. And if our nervous system is out of whack, because you know, it's that, I've got a really lovely graphic actually that I share quite a lot on my page. The not knowing spikes our anxiety, and that circle then means that we're more heightened, and so then our senses will be much more heightened because of that. So I'll be more heightened to smells, touch, views. It's taken me a few years to realize sensory wise, I find the winter really difficult, really hard work. And the worst one is when it goes dark, especially, you know, in the middle of winter when 4 o'clock it's dark outside. If blinds or curtains aren't pulled and you have lights on, it's like it really, somebody stabbing me, because it's like that light bouncing off hurts. I now understand why I've never coped in an office, that really powerful light, fluorescent light. Also just that amount of people, that noise. I can't work, literally. I sometimes in the house, being around my boys, and I literally remove myself because my brain cannot shut them off. I don't mean that in a rude way, but switch that noise off to focus. And you mentioned at the beginning, Cheryl, how do we make our businesses more accessible? I'm not here to be able to, share that, but what I have learned is I think when we're open to how can we make and be more accessible, having that dialogue, having that conversation and that language. My website, thepdaspace.com, has lots of information, and we've got ebooks that are quite picture orientated, and there's one about being neuro-affirming, so the language that is really supportive. So one of the big things is that I said, somebody asked me last week, and I said, well, I wouldn't introduce you as the lady with brown hair, so i.e. I'm not with autism. I wouldn't say, oh, the lady's hair with glasses. I would say, oh, there were some ladies who wore glasses. And if you're unsure, ask, what is it? And very often, neurodivergent, but maybe anybody will be like, oh, I've not been asked that before, I don't know. Okay, well, how can we and I always feel like a dance, how can we unpick this? The biggest thing that I never understood, and I've probably given myself the hardest time, and this year there's such a relief through my screening, is my processing time. And I feel that through my work, sorry if I'm jumping and weaving, even though I've got notes, through my work, through my youngest son, the challenges, understanding my own profile so much better. It really giving myself that permission that my processing does take a long time. I put a lot of time into certain meetings that I need to attend. So I've only got so much energy. So, okay, well, that's going to wipe me. Okay, so the next day, I now know not to put anything in, not to expect anything of myself. If I do something well, that's a bonus. So going back to accessibility, like Karen said about, subtitles, this year, the end of April, I host a global online virtual summit on a profile of autism, like I've said, PDA, but it supports anybody. I feel that everybody who works with people needs to go just watch one summit, and it's free. So again, that accessibility, but they're subtitled. They're in different places. Yes, sometimes people can find the website a bit clunky. This year, anyone who buys the pack, there's transcripts. We've invited and asked speakers to limit how long they talk, but we all know that when people are passionate, they can talk longer. Providing different styles, because very often people won't know what their style is. I prefer that sort of informal conversation. Pardon me, some people prefer a PowerPoint to keep them focused. I actually just can then lose myself. They'll be like looking, and especially if there's too many words or graphics on. But I think my biggest invite to the world is just being open and saying, I don't know, I'm not going to get it right. And I was at a big event in Cardiff about celebrating neurodivergence, and just like that, somebody said, I'm really worried now that I'm going to get my wording wrong. And I went, so put that disclaimer, say, I'm really worried I might say that incorrectly, please, and then put the invite of, please tell me if I've got it wrong. And I think that's where some of the language over the years, where things change, people get really scared. I know I've done it. Whereas actually, if we invite people to say, do you know what, that's okay, just, if I do get it wrong, tell me. And the way I support the speakers, so I've got, I think by next week, 36 webinars, which is, I think, 40 speakers, is where we perhaps haven't heard from a speaker. I'll send a little message and just say, what can I do to support you? So I'm not going, where's your webinar, or where's your, information that I need, or I'm like, hi guys, what can I do? And I've been part of a book collaboration, which I can't believe I've been in. And it's really taught me how I support people and what I need of, if I'm working with someone, or I'm, say, with the summit, this is all the things we're going to need. But how do we, manage these moving parts? I send out, which Lynn was referring to, I send out newsletters every Sunday, which is hysterical for dyslexic. I get a lot of support through Access to Work. And there was a mistake. Someone else puts it all up properly, because anyone who knows mailing lists, those, the fun of trying to get something all in the right place and pretty and all of that. It's not my area of genius. And the wrong add-in was added. And I was able to be really calm. I reached out to the person who the ebook was based on from the workshop. It was like, guess what? We've bluffed it. Really sorry. Looking at how we can resolve it. And I think that through my parenting, my boys, of just holding my hands up. Sorry, I got it wrong. I haven't got the book on this. I'm really sorry. I got it wrong today. Or before. With one of my boys, I'm having to quite a lot go, I'm really sorry. Yeah, we got it wrong.
Do you think we can ask some questions? We've only got about, say, 5, 10
minutes
left.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to know if you have any questions. I've sort of written down some notes myself. I'm finding it really, really interesting. The keynote that I've written down, I can only change myself. Wow. It's so obvious, but I hadn't thought of it in those terms. I can only change myself. And in a way, thinking to yourself, well, I've got to work on myself, because if only for my children's sake, because sometimes we'll do more for our children than we'll do for ourselves. And I love that area where you said, or what you said, I'm sorry when I get something wrong, that's not my area of genius. I love that. Absolutely love that. So I'd love to know if you've got any observations or questions. So I'm going to come to you, Lynn, because you're in the same field as Nicola, as it were. So what are your observations? Or you might have a question.
I think there's lots that I resonate with when Nicola's talking. And one thing that I know I've benefited from, because Nicola works, and I think for all of us, we can take this on board. If we think about what we find difficult or what we would need, and we put things in place to address that, we've got more in common with other people than we know, even if we're not on the neurodiverse spectrum. We really have, we're all human beings for start, so it all starts there. But I remember, first of all, when I emailed Nicola, and I had a response back saying, hey, I've got your message. Thanks for that. It was so nice. And it was so reassuring. And it was, if I haven't got back to you, just, get back in touch and it'll be fine. Just so reassuring for me, reaching out to somebody, not knowing what to expect. I was in a new world, a new field of work. And it was really supportive. And I'm pretty sure now I know, Nicola, that she will have done that, because not knowing if somebody actually got your email, or seeing that is hard, and that can create anxiety. So I think learning about ourselves is really important, and just as you were saying, I think the more we do that, the more we are aware of other people too.
Great one. I'm going to come to you, Ellen, because you were on my mind this morning, because I've been watching the new one of the top films on Netflix, all about food. And it parallels so well with what we're talking about this morning, because we forget the first environment we're given to look after is our bodies. Yeah. Too often we start thinking about, what can I do for other people or the world or everything outside? But we forget, the first environment we're planted in is this body, and recognizing we can only change ourselves and we can only look after ourselves, and now, I've moved into 60 and I'm thinking I've got no one around me now to look after me. It's down to me. And that's a bit of a shock as well. There's nobody to say, what have you eaten today? Or blah, 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 So over to you, Ellen. How is this resonating with you, having dyslexia and boys with dyslexia, and be in this whole nutrition market and field where, again, you know, your body is the environment and you can only change yourself.
Yeah, so interesting talk, and resonated with a lot you were saying. Definitely about the fidgeting. I've got that. And you know, just quieting the mind. And what I work a lot with women with their gut health, and there's a direct connection between your gut microbiome and your brain as well. So helping people through their anxiety and depression through changing their gut health is a huge thing for me. And I'm working on my soothing my own nervous system regulation at the moment as well, using herbs and food to soothe the nervous system, because if you're neurodiverse, kind of you can be 100 miles per hour all the time to the point of exhaustion, but you don't know you're exhausted until you hit that wall. And yeah, having that awareness around yourself. I'd like to know, because I've never heard of pathological demand avoidance. Could you, in a kind of a nutshell, explain exactly how that presents itself in a person?
Yeah. So the key features of PDA will often resist ordinary demands of life, i.e., if you think of little people, put your shoes on. Wow, I don't like the word meltdown anymore. Sensory overwhelms, that massive. Using social strategies as part of an avoidance. One of mine at the moment is hysterical because he's not within education at this moment. And, you know, we're endeavouring to get him to get out of the house each day. And he's like, no, my legs don't work. You possibly take your plate to the dishwasher. No, my arms don't work. So that very use of, but that's a very simple one, but they can really, I mean, I felt like I describe quite often that I used to feel like I was in a circus because there'd be this whirlwind. Often appears really sociable, but actually is lacking the deeper understanding. Maybe they've also lifted, you know, thinking more now of YouTube, certain phrases, but don't really know what that phrase means, but will be using that. Again, I don't necessarily like the term obsessive, but I can't yet think of a different one. Obsessive behaviours, and the focus will often be on people versus things. So where, you know, people think of an autistic person, maybe they really like trains or cars or whatever it might be. Often the focus will be on people. So football players, or I know people have say that their children have got one particular friend that very perhaps wanting to control them because they really, you know, that connection. And this one, the experience, success, mood swings and impulsivity. Again, though, I think if you're not understanding and that, you know, reducing demands, but that experience of sort of swinging from 0 to 100 is because, you know, by not understanding yet that there's a lot of unmet needs. So they're just going to go, you know, I'll never forget giving one of my boys a chocolate bar that had broken, and just the massive overwhelm. And it was like, but it's a chocolate bar. But I think that one can come in lots, really. Does that help?
That's interesting. Thank you. And I'm going to come to Karen. Do you have a question or an observation, Karen?
I think for me, it was that whole thing of how can I support you? That kind of changes everything, because it sort of, you know, don't understand everything, but I'm here for you in whatever shape or form that takes. And that's just such a simple thing, but it can make such a difference to somebody else. And I mean, a friend of mine, her son has got PDA, but her son gets very, very aggressive and gets a little bit violent. So they've had an awful lot of work to go through it, but and an awful lot of education, but it's transformed his life. That understanding of where he's coming from and the fear that he's living with on a daily basis. It's quite scary, really, what his perception is.
That's a lovely observation, isn't it? How can I support you? As opposed to saying this is right, this is wrong, this is how you should do it. You've got to do it my way. Great one. Thank you, Karen. Coming to you, Sangeeta, do you have any questions or would you like to make an observation?
Yeah, I think don't have a question, but I love what you mentioned, Nicola, and I think my work started as well. I started my spiritual journey when I found myself screaming at my children because they were not doing something, and it took me back in my childhood when my mom used to do that, and I used to hate it. So in that moment, suddenly I put myself in my kids' shoe, and I'm saying, oh my God, I don't want my kids to be scared of me or hate me. I want them to feel comfortable and feel safe. And so they can come and share anything. So it's not my place to punish them. And it's all started my journey 15 years ago. And now I'm creating peaceful parenting, helping parents to go within themselves, to take that journey. And it's all about understanding ourselves. And that's why I said, that's the key. Okay, who am I? What am I? What traits am I carrying from parenting, and how can I be there and be better for my children? And I love that. So yeah, I think we will connect soon, Nicola and Lynn, because we are in the similar kind of field supporting parents. But I absolutely love this talk, and it was so important. So thank you for all the information.
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Really
If you were to leave us with a light bulb of learning, Nicola, what would it be if you were to pick sort of the main topic theme or something that is so important we must do? What would you like to leave with us?
I suppose be curious. And I think we're being taught, this judgment, there's a big blame game, isn't there, globally, is be curious, I learned, I've got Dr. Ross Green, who's speaking this year at the summit. Children do well if they can. Adults do well if they can. What is it that we're lacking to be able to not do well? I've had businesses since my 20s. They fell down because I couldn't write. And I never knew about something quite simple as access to work. Yeah, I'd love everybody. I know I shared you the ebook graphic, but for people, if you register and you come and watch one webinar, I don't know why I always go one, because being curious.
That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So I just want people to share with me their takeaways now. I love that, be curious. I can remember when I worked for MenCap and I was sent into a school because I had to create a qualification for somebody who they didn't feel could get any qualification or certificates, but they wanted that person to be the same as their classmates. And I had to be curious, and I spent the day with that person being curious to look at their abilities and recognize they knew the difference between the afternoon and the morning, when it was raining and when it wasn't raining. So I could create a program of learning just for that one person by being curious. So I just love that point. So I'm going to say that's my big learning point of just being curious. I've got lots of notes here, but being curious. And I come to you, Lynn. What would be your action point you're going to go away with? I know I've got a list. You've probably got 2 pages.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that struck me is actually like a lot of this stuff I do, but I forget why I do it. And I think it's really important to remember why we do this stuff and how important that connection is.
Lovely, thank you. And Sangeeta, what is your takeaway? What will you take away and put into action?
I think for me, it's always about listening and observing, because that's where we understand a lot. A lot of us, when we go out in the world, we're trying to tell people who we are. But sometimes, especially in that coaching space and other people, when we meet people who are different from us, from a different background or whatever, it's just listen and observe, because a lot people don't say. We will get that energetically, we'll receive the information what the other person need, but we just need to be quiet in our mind and be very, very, like, I love it, be curious, just listen and observe. I do that, but I'm going to do a little bit more from today.
Thank you. And Karen, what is your takeaway? Not giveaway, takeaway. Well, you're going to give it to us anyway, so it's a giveaway.
I think it's just what Sangeeta was saying, but also that whole thing of how can I support you? It's that curiosity, listening, and just asking that simple question. And I reckon just those three things can make a huge, huge difference to other people. And ultimately, it's just bring people. Everybody is just a person with a pulse. We've all got different problems. We've all got different crap going on in the background. Just be kind. It's not that difficult.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, what a lovely point to finish on. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Nicola. You have been amazing. Do you want to raise that postcard again for everyone?
Yeah, pop it in your group or share it with people. All you've got to do is put the PDA space into Facebook or actually into Google. I'm pretty sure when I've Googled myself, I seem to be popping up all over. We've got Google reviews. I've hit, I think, 14 reviews in less than 2 weeks. And the summit's free to access. The weekend it's on from Friday, the 26th of April to the 28th of April. And we're covering so much: sensory differences, lived experience, Tourette's, OCD, auditory processing differences, the limbic system, trauma. We've got Dad's Corner.
Well done. Oh gosh.
So yeah,
I shall be there. I'm going to pick up this.
I'm signed up.
yeah.
I want to be there. So thank you, Nicola. Can we put our hands together? Thank Nicola. Way. So
thank you, Cheryl. Thank you very, very much. I'm really, really, touched to have been asked and to come in and
I'm sure we're going to stay in touch anyway, because we're already conversing on Facebook. So thank you, everyone. So we come to the end of Iron Woman Hour this morning, and so I'm wishing you a great week ahead, and look forward to seeing you same time, same place next Monday. And I've learned tons. I can't wait to start going through these notes now. So thank you, Nicola. Thank you. So cheerio.
Have a lovely week.
Next week.
Bye.
Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.